Maybe this is why Dostoevsky still feels relevant. He didn't write about heroes who were flawless. He wrote about people who were divided inside, intelligent, sensitive, self-aware, and struggling with it. If you saw yourself in this, that's not something to feel embarrassed about. It means you're paying attention to your inner world, and that already places you ahead of most people. The goal isn't to silence your mind. It's to understand it well enough that it stops controlling you. Depth is not a burden, but unmanaged depth can become one. So perhaps the real work isn't becoming simpler, it's becoming steadier. If this resonated with you, stay with this journey. We're not here for quick fixes. We're here to understand the patterns that shape us and slowly, deliberately reshape them. And that kind of growth doesn't happen in a moment. It happens over time. Now here's the part that matters. The same mind that overthinks can also see patterns others miss. The same depth that creates suffering can create extraordinary clarity. Nothing is wrong with you. The issue is not that you think deeply. It's that you haven't learned how to direct that depth. Dostoevsky didn't write about hyper-aware people to condemn them. He wrote about them because they are capable of profound transformation. The turning point comes when awareness stops being self-attack and becomes self-understanding. There's a difference. Self-attack sounds like, why am I like this? Why do I ruin everything? Self-understanding sounds like, this is my pattern, and I can choose differently. A reflective mind becomes powerful when it shifts from analysis to action. Not dramatic action, just small, deliberate steps taken despite uncertainty. For example, sending the message even if you feel exposed. Accepting kindness without dissecting it. Making a decision before your mind invents 10 more complications. Depth does not disappear when you choose simplicity. Intelligence does not vanish when you act imperfectly. In fact, the most psychologically mature people are not the ones who understand themselves endlessly. They are the ones who understand themselves enough and still move forward. Your intensity can become wisdom. Your self-awareness can become discipline. Your emotional complexity can become empathy. But only when you stop using your mind as a courtroom and start using it as a compass. You were never meant to escape your depth. You were meant to integrate it. And when you do, something changes quietly, not in how much you think, but in how peacefully you live with your own thoughts. Here's the part we don't talk about enough. When over-awareness and resistance go unchecked, they don't just make you thoughtful. They slowly isolate you, not dramatically, not all at once, but quietly. You begin to feel misunderstood, not because people reject you, but because you assume they can't possibly understand the depth of what's happening inside you. So you explain less, you withdraw more, you keep conversations on the surface while your real thoughts stay hidden. Over time, this creates distance. You may tell yourself you prefer solitude, and sometimes that's true. But there's a difference between chosen solitude and protective isolation. Another danger is emotional stagnation. If you constantly analyze your motives, question your desires, and doubt your decisions, you stop moving forward. Opportunities pass. Relationships cool down. Not because you weren't capable, but because you hesitated long, enough for momentum to disappear. And here's the subtle psychological risk. You can become attached to your own suffering. It starts to feel meaningful, familiar, almost necessary. Letting go of it feels like losing part of who you are. But suffering that once made you feel deep can eventually make you feel stuck. And the longer you stay in that pattern, the harder it becomes to separate insight from self-sabotage. So the real question isn't whether you're intelligent. It's whether your intelligence is serving your life or quietly limiting it. There's another layer to this. It's not just overthinking. It's resistance. Dostoevsky noticed something strange about certain intelligent people. They don't only suffer from life, they sometimes push against happiness itself. Not consciously, but subtly. When things are going well, there's a quiet discomfort. When someone treats you kindly, you wonder what they really want. When life feels calm, part of you feels restless. Why? Because peace can feel ordinary. And if your identity has been built around depth, struggle, and intensity, then simplicity can almost feel like a loss of meaning. Think about it. If you've spent years being the deep one, the thoughtful one, the person who sees through illusions. Then what happens if life becomes simple? If love is easy? If success comes without drama? Who are you then? Sometimes, without realizing it, you create small complications. You question someone's intentions. You delay a decision. You overanalyze a good opportunity until it feels risky. Not because you want to fail, but because struggle feels familiar. There's a strange comfort in emotional complexity. Dostoevsky's characters often chose suffering over comfort, not because they enjoyed pain, but because suffering made them feel real. It confirmed their depth. It proved they weren't shallow. Here's the contrast. A simpler personality moves toward pleasure and avoids pain. A hyper-aware personality questions pleasure and studies pain. One trusts life, the other interrogates it. And if you recognize yourself in this, the question becomes important. Are you protecting your depth, or are you protecting your fear? Let's start with something uncomfortable. Some people don't just experience pain, they analyze it until it becomes part of their identity. Dostoevsky understood this pattern deeply, especially in characters like the underground man from Notes from Underground. He described a type of person who is painfully self-aware. Not just reflective, but hyper-aware. A person who can see their own flaws, contradictions, insecurities, and instead of escaping them, they stare at them. The problem isn't intelligence, it's overconsciousness. When you are extremely aware of your motives, your weaknesses, your desires, it becomes hard to act freely. You hesitate. You second-guess. You imagine every possible outcome before making a move. For example, imagine you like someone. A simple person might just send the message. But you think, what if I seem desperate? What if they lose respect? What does it say about me that I even care this much? And suddenly, something natural becomes complicated. This kind of mind doesn't allow simple happiness. It questions it, dissects it, sometimes even sabotages it. Dostoevsky suggested that too much consciousness can become a form of paralysis. When you understand yourself too clearly, you also see your contradictions. You notice that you want love and independence. You want success and safety. You want depth, but you also want peace. And instead of choosing, you stall. Over time, this creates a strange pattern. You feel stuck, but you also feel superior in your awareness. You suffer, but you take pride in how deeply you understand your suffering. That's the trap. And if this feels familiar, there's a reason it does. Maybe you've noticed something about yourself. You don't just experience life, you examine it. When something small happens, it doesn't stay small. It grows inside your mind. A short comment from someone can echo for days. A simple mistake can turn into a quiet self-trial where you are both the judge and the accused. You feel things deeply, but you also question those feelings. Why did I react like that? Why can't I just let this go? Why does everything feel heavier for me than it seems to for others? Sometimes you even feel split in two. One part of you wants peace, something simple, stable, maybe even ordinary. The other part almost resists it. It searches for intensity, for meaning, for something profound enough to justify all this inner turbulence. And that can be exhausting. You might look functional on the outside, responsible, intelligent, thoughtful, but inside there's constant movement, doubt, reflection, guilt, desire, imagination. It never fully rests. You don't just want to live. You want to understand why you live the way you do. And here's the quiet truth. This pattern isn't weakness. It's not random either. There's a psychological structure behind it, something that certain writers understood long before modern psychology tried to explain it. To see it clearly, we have to go deeper. You don't suffer because life is hard. You suffer because you think too much. And deep down, you know that. You replay conversations long after they end. You imagine futures that haven't happened. You feel things more intensely than the people around you. And sometimes you almost resent them for how easily they move on. Part of you believes this depth makes you different, maybe even superior. But another part of you wonders if it's slowly destroying your peace. You crave meaning, yet you sabotage your own happiness. You want love, yet you test it. You want success, yet you hesitate at the edge of it. It's as if something inside you prefers struggle over simplicity. What if this isn't random? What if there's a psychological pattern behind this? One that a man like Dostoevsky understood better than most? And what if the very trait that makes you feel isolated is also the key to your strength, but only if you understand it in time?